Assalamu alaikum and hello. What is CPTSD and how does it differ from PTSD? PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder, and this is when one singular event has happened in your life. It could be an armed robbery, it could be witnessing a murder, it could be a car crash, it could be a teacher slamming a child at school. It could be one bullying incident. It could be one thing. More likely than not, the PTSD has come about or erupted due to a singular event. And that then has a video, sound, auditory, olfactory, all your senses involved in this memory video in your mind, where you remember it in fight or flight mode, so it's super vivid in your memory, and when it comes into your mind, you suffer from crippling anxiety and emotional dysregulation, as if the memory has brought to life that event all over again, so you relive it and relive it. Now, of course, you need therapy if you've been through any incident or event that has brought on PTSD. However, CPTSD is complex post-traumatic stress disorder. So what happens with CPTSD is that instead of it being like PTSD, where there was one event that caused all of this flashbacks and you have the video memory playing in your mind of how everything looked, how everything smelled, how everything sounded, with, of course, the heightened vividness due to your fight or flight mode in that moment. With CPTSD, you do not have this. There is no one singular event that caused this traumatic response. It is more like a long period of mini events happening over a lengthy period of time. And these mini events trigger emotions in you because of the psychological abuse, which is far more insidious because it's not as easily detected or detectable. And it is something that happens under the surface and flies under the radar. But the effects, due to it being so deeply, subliminally, and subconsciously devastating, the effects linger on for quite much longer than if it was physical abuse. So I'm going to read you something from the website called cptsdfoundation.org. And there's an author called Pete Walker, and he unpacks everything to do with these emotional flashbacks and the triggers and symptoms of CPTSD. So let me just read to you what he says. What are emotional flashbacks? According to Pete Walker, emotional flashbacks are a complex mixture of intense and confusing reliving of past trauma from childhood. It is like living a nightmare while you are awake, with overwhelming sorrow, toxic shame, and a sense of inadequacy. Filled with confusing and distressing emotions from the past, an emotional flashback is extremely painful. In my experience, an emotional flashback causes me to feel nuclear war is about to begin. Yeah, it switches you on in every terror-filled way where you feel like you're gonna die almost. It feels like there's something threatening your life that is extremely overpowering and overwhelming, but yet nothing is happening in the real world. In reality, the birds are chirping outside, the sun may be shining, clouds are floating by, the breeze is wafting through, and trees are swaying, but inside of you, it's like you're being attacked by a virus of memories, but there's no video memory with the sensory download to make you feel an experience specifically. It is just an overwhelming gush of emotions that leaves you all of a sudden in an emotional wreckage, and you're trying to sort out why you're having a panic attack or an anxious episode in the middle of the day, in the middle of nothing. Nothing in the real world is actually going on. There is no primus of threat. There is no external, enemy. There is nothing to fight, but you are switched on in full fight or flight mode, which causes you the feeling in your heart and mind and soul like it's the end of the world and you are going to die. Okay, that's my 2 cents. Back to what Pete Walker has to say. I become hyper-vigilant beyond my normal and want to isolate away from friends and family. Unfortunately, doing so only magnifies the feelings of abandonment, and I get stuck in a loop of feeling endangered and trying to reason my way out of my feelings of hopelessness and despair. To make matters worse, I hear my inner critic repeating messages given to me in childhood, calling me a loser, a nobody, a failure, and not a good person. These old tapes leave me without energy and sometimes feeling self-destructive. So a lot of the time you will feel like there's something terribly, terribly wrong with you, because you cannot point out one specific or one particular source of these emotional flashbacks, which is the symptom of PTSD. You cannot source where it's coming from. It's like an unseen, unknown enemy, and it's attacking you, and it comes up with all of the worst triggered stuff from your childhood, all the memories, all the painful things that anyone has ever said or done to you in your life. And this is, of course, very terrifying to go through. I would remember sitting in my car waiting for my kids to come out of school, and all of a sudden be wrapped in this blanket of just terror and not knowing why I'm feeling so anxious, and like my heart is about to pound out of my chest and my belly is about to fall down to the ground, and your head is left feeling like somebody chopped it off, rolled it down the hill, and it goes over and over and over, and you're trying to find the way up and what's going on, and then someone picks up the head and just plops it back onto your neck in any haphazard manner. You feel like you don't know who you are. You don't know where you are. You don't know what's happening. You cannot explain and dissect and really fathom your feelings. You cannot understand what is happening inside your body. Everything feels out of whack. It feels like all your plugs from all your internal organs have been taken apart and plugged into the wrong organs. So your stomach is now beating, your heart is now digesting your food, your liver is now, breathing. It feels completely and utterly dysregulated. Everything inside of you feels upside down, inside out, and going round and round as if you're thrown into a washer. So it's very jarring, it's very traumatizing. That is why it's called trauma. CPTSD, the T is trauma. And it is very terror-inducing. And of course, coming out of narcissistic abuse, this would plague me every so often, like a barrage, just sitting under an avalanche of emotions that I could not process. I could not understand, make head or tail. I could not sift through them. I could not understand what was happening in me. And it was due to the effects, even though it wasn't a very long time that I was with the narcissist, the effects linger on so much longer. There's an amazing man called Richard Grannon on YouTube as well. Do check him out. He talks about, or gives the similitude of, the spider in Lord of the Rings. So the spider, being the narcissist, will trap you or lure you in with some bait. Then it catches you in its claws and it spikes you with its beak and it inserts in you a venom. This venom will infect you long after the spider has gone. Okay? So once the spider has discarded you, or you've discarded the spider, i.e. the narcissist, you think it's over because they've left. But the CPTSD has only just begun in full force. That's because the venom is now lingering in your body and fully taking over your mind, your heart, your body, your soul, overriding all of your natural inbuilt programs, all your operating systems, and you're left still inflicted in most cases still trauma bonded to the narcissist, believing that they are your soulmate, or that you love them, or that what you had was real, because your brain cannot cognitively associate with the reality, because it's so harsh and painful that this wasn't a real person even. Yes, they're human flesh and blood, but internally they're so damaged, they might as well have been a robot masquerading in a human suit. They feel nothing, they did not love you, they did not care about you. They certainly don't miss you, even if they come back apologizing and claiming that they have changed. Of course, it's just to hoover you and get you back into the cycle again where they use you as supply. So all of this comes down full force and really, really attacks your inner being, your mental health, your well-being, your spiritual being. And the effects of the venom is what you're left with, causing you the CPTSD over and over and over again repeatedly. So it's up to us to start to detox from it. And that is the long, lengthy process of healing, which I help people with. And that is the feeling your emotions, becoming emotionally literate, going very deep into them. Yes, it's the sucky, ugly work that nobody wants to do. Everyone just wants the quick fix and just slap on a band-aid, but it doesn't work that way. So you go into them and you really have to sift through it to get through all of the landmines and all of the poison and all of the infected tissue and all of the malignant tumors and all of the disgustingness, and one by one sort through them and heal. One symptom after the other symptom, one wound after the other wound, and slowly start to heal and build that strong scar tissue over the wounds that have been ripped wide open. And they rip you so badly wide open, they rip you all the way back into childhood open. That's how deep the CPTSD runs. So it's not just, I'm suffering from what he caused me in the period of our marriage or whatever it was, but I'm suffering from what he's evoked in me, opening a deep chasm, like a cliff down into a very deep, hollow abyss that reaches all the way back to my early formative years with my parents or primary caregivers and all the trauma that I faced or grew up with since the beginning of time. That's how bad and deep the rabbit hole goes. It's very important that we do a deep dive into ourselves and that we take the time out to heal and not cover it up with superficial, superfluous healing that looks like more like a band-aid than actually going deep in there, cleaning the wound of all the muck and grime and pus and destroyed rotten tissue that stinks, and the stench is emanating because people can feel that you're upset and hurt and destroyed inside. And then the CPTSD, symptoms, if they come on while you're with people, you literally will be a nervous wreck and won't be able to talk. You won't be able to string along two sentences that make sense even sometimes. And, of course, your loved ones will understand to a point, but unless you've actually gone through narcissistic abuse, the only people that really understand are those who have gone through it. So hopefully this video will give you some insight on CPTSD and what is required of you to heal this. And it's a very long and arduous process, but it is not impossible. And it will take a long time. And of course, everyone's different and everyone's temperament is different. But the work still needs to be done where you spend time expressing these feelings, understanding what they are firstly, and reading them like you would a book. So you got to read your internal landscape very articulately, very in-depth, and very succinctly. You've got to really deeply understand yourself and your emotional gauge, your emotional compass, your emotional barometer, and understand how and when and what triggers you. And if there's no real outside trigger, which is very, very characteristic of CPTSD, then understand what is the feeling that you're feeling. Go deep into it and feel those feelings. Don't by any means shut them down. That is self-abandonment, that is rejection, that is self-discarding. Forget about the narcissist. You can become your own worst narcissist and discard yourself every time you shut down those feelings. So this is me telling you and giving you full permission and license to open up your heart, open up your feelings, deep dive inside your soul, your mind, your heart, your every part of you, and figure out what it is that's going on and what it is you need, with the mentality of a caregiver, a parent, and a loving, supportive guide that you can be for yourself. And hopefully through my courses, I can be for you. Take care. Assalamu alaikum and goodbye.